Hey, I'm Kevin, and this is HFX by Bike, a channel all about getting around Halifax by bike, except sometimes I make pitches about how to make existing bike infrastructure better to use. The Halifax Urban Greenway is a classic piece of orphaned bike infrastructure. It's a multi-use path in the peninsula's South End that runs along Beaufort Avenue between South Street and Bellevue Avenue. It also runs between Connaught Avenue and Oxford, partly through Conrose Park and partly through a new section of multi-use path on Coburg. These two sections don't connect to one another, and neither connects to another part of the bike network. They're not useless, but the lack of connectivity limits the kind of trips you can make with them. The obvious first question is, how hard would it be to connect the northern and southern sections together? And I think the answer is not that hard. This section of Oxford is a simple, two-lane road with intermittent street parking on both sides. It's not a trucking route, but a single low-frequency bus line does make its way through the area, so traffic lanes need to be about 3.3 meters wide. The road itself is about 12 to 12.1 meters wide, so there's space for two traffic lanes and two standard 2.4 meter wide parking lanes with a little bit over half a meter left. Both of the ends that we're connecting to are multi-use paths, so the path of least resistance here is to make the middle section the same design. That means that we're going to replace the 1.8 meter wide sidewalk and the variable width grass boulevard with a multi-use path, just like with the other sections. Along the way, we have some small trees that would block the path. Normally I'm hesitant to remove trees, but all of the ones along the stretch are barely more than saplings, so I'm okay with it. There are also some utility poles, but moving them is pretty standard for this kind of work, so that's fine. So the path would mostly overlay with the existing sidewalk and boulevard, and we can just use our leftover 0.6 meters of space for a new boulevard to reimplant the trees and utility poles. And yeah, that's it. This one's a pretty undramatic connection to build out. I suspect there's a plan for the area that looks a lot like this one, somewhere in a drawer somewhere, waiting for the next time that the street gets resurfaced or the pipes replaced as a way to implement it on the cheap. The newly intact path still doesn't really connect to anything else in the bike network, or even very many points of interest for people to travel to, so let's do some expansions. In the south, the path is within spitting distance of Point Pleasant Park and St. Mary's University. How hard would it be to connect these? The city actually has already started to plan out what it would look like, and I'm going to crib some of their designs and go over the pros and cons. The most expansive option would see what is in effect a new small linear park along the rail cut behind the Oaks at St. Mary's. This runs along an existing unmanaged footpath before splitting into a pedestrian bridge to cross the rail cut connecting to Pine Hill Drive, and another one going to Goresbrook Avenue, which is basically a parking lot for the university. The area gets a new park, and that park gets fast on-foot and on-bike connections across the rail cut. By happenstance, bikes can move through parks in a way that cars can't. This doesn't really have any traffic implications, so the main barrier is going to be cost. Parks cost money, paths cost money, and bridges cost money. So this option is very cool, but everyone's probably going to be a little bit mad about the costs. The overall concept is pretty modular though, so we can just ditch the bridge to save on costs, but then keep the linear park. Fewer people have quick access to it, but we can always just add the bridge in later if people want and if money is available. If we're going to be routing bikes from the new park to Rogers Drive, then the way to get to the park is going to be via Tower Road. Tower north of the bridge is already partly traffic calmed, south of the bridge isn't, and the on-stream parking works well as de facto traffic calming. We can improve this a bit by doing things like outlining designated parking spaces in paint or with pavers, and by narrowing the bridge with some planters or concrete slabs. This is all pretty low effort. If the linear park isn't in the cards, then the main route would be to exit from the existing path on Bellevue and proceed along Roxton to Roby Street. Roxton is a comparatively low traffic street with about 700 or fewer cars a day, so that's going to be fine for most people. Speeds are a little high, about 50 kilometers an hour, so that stretch could probably benefit from some traffic calming to bring that down a bit. That leads to Roby and Goresbrook. The latter is basically a parking lot. It's split in two by an impassable physical barrier, and this would need to be transformed into a mode filter, kind of like the relatively new one on Stuart Graham in the West End. This is relatively cheap to throw in to allow bikes to move freely between the two sections of Goresbrook without either detouring or doing weird stuff on the sidewalks. From there, the same minimalist traffic calming could be applied to the area south of Goresbrook. Okay, now let's turn our attention to connecting to something in the north. I missed it when I did my Dead Zone video last year, but a few people asked me if the Greenway could just continue north along Oxford Street because it'd be really direct and cool if it did. Technically it could, but I think it would be a brutal fight to make it happen and might qualify as a Pyrrhic victory. North of Coburg, where the middle section that we added terminates, Oxford varies between 11.5 and 12 meters in width, which is pretty similar to what we were dealing with before. But there are some differences. Both sides of the street are lined with trees, and not the saplings that I sacrificed before. These are large and really nice. They're on both sides of the road, so if we do a multi-use path like the rest of the Greenway, one side of the road is going to lose 100% of those trees. We can do that, but everyone will be mad. But the road is really wide, and it's a two-lane design, so we can just put a two-way on-road bike lane, and that'll work. There's plenty of space, I hear you say. This is true right up until the intersections, where the lanes split to make use of the limited signal time. There's still some extra space left over, but it's closer to 1 meter when we're looking for more like 3. We could theoretically take one of the turn lanes, but Oxford is already heavily congested, and I think that returns us to the point where we are with the cutting of the trees. Everyone would be really mad. So yes, we could fit some kind of connection along the rest of Oxford, but I don't think there's a way to do it without it turning into a colossal fight. This hurts me personally, as I would use that 3 or 4 times a week to get around. The existing path through Conrose Park connects up to Connaught to the west of Oxford. Can we do anything with that? This is a bit more promising in Oxford. Connaught is heavily congested, but is so poorly designed that it has almost 2 full lanes of empty space that we can theoretically make use of. Connaught is 2 traffic lanes and a parking lane on each side, but at this end it connects to Jubilee, which is strictly speaking a 1 lane in each direction road. So we have 1 to 2 basically useless lanes on each side from a traffic flow perspective. The traffic itself basically forms a wall, so let's just evade it for as long as we can by running a 2-way bike lane up the western side of Connaught. I think there's still space for either a full-length right turn lane or a parking lane, but I've just left it as a parking lane. I think that's probably more useful for the neighborhood. If you go far enough north, Connaught runs into the same problems as Oxford. The space at the intersection is already spoken for, and getting some for the bikes is going to be a big fight. In my Dead Zone video, I pitched a bikeway along Norwood, and the path could just end here. Crossing here would be a lot smoother than trying to merge into traffic on Jubilee, I think. The main drawback to this approach is that it's pretty circuitous, especially if you just wanted to head north. We can make all of this a lot simpler and cheaper and get most of the benefits of a path along Oxford just by asking for a small sacrifice from drivers. Heading back to Conrose Park and connecting up to Beach Street, we get all the same connectivity as Oxford, but with none of the fighting. The street is already traffic calmed because of a nearby school, and there's only one major barrier. The traffic on Jubilee and lack of priority would make crossing along Beach an infinite waiting game for cyclists. The cheapest solution would be to make it a 4-way stop. It's already saturated with traffic during peak hours, so in practice this won't change drivers' experience all that much, but will let cyclists bypass all the congestion to get around, all for roughly $0. I'm not thrilled with the northern connections I came up with, to be honest, and I'm open to suggestions. All the ones I came up with face some pretty rotten trade-offs in terms of quality and difficulty to get implemented. I think the bikeway along Beach is probably the easiest, but it's kind of a weird bundle of detours around the West End, which isn't ideal. Those are some ideas I had for improving the Halifax Urban Greenway in South End Halifax. Let me know in the comments which options you'd want to see implemented, or if you have any of your own that you think would be better. As always, thanks for watching through to the end of the video. Be sure to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more videos all about getting around Halifax by bike and urbanism more generally. That's it for this one. Thanks for watching and see you next time.